A girl with a sniper rifle aims at a crowd of people. Her target, Leonard Vandersteen, 35 years old, a member of the Joint Council, who has full citizenship. One shot, and here is a man in a tailcoat lying in a pool of his own blood, which flows out of his head. There is a faint smirk on the man's lips. This act, which was supposed to strengthen control over the government, instead eventually led it to utter collapse. From this ashes of the old world, a new, happy state will rise. Two people in tight black suits are pushing through the crowd to make their way to the lying Leo. The man identifies these people as Brutus and Maria. Brutus asks the woman to call for help, but it's getting too late. Leo feels relieved that he will die in the arms of those he loves. Leo closes his eyes, feeling a tear roll down his cheek. He will no longer be able to fulfill this promise. He won't be able to see how their rotten world will change. Creatures who, instead of trying to solve the world's problems, made empty promises and stole from those who believed in them. These people infiltrated their system into schools to pollute the minds of other people. They were taught that these vile oppressors were representatives, protectors, virtues, and saviors. They profited from someone else's grief. They didn't care about others. Leo himself would not have believed that such monsters in human form exist if he had not seen closed bakeries, dirty, long-neglected parks, boarded up and never reopened shops, crowded with hungry and destitute children of orphanages. These scammers wove such a strong web that it seemed that nothing could ever break through it to see the light and the good life again. Leo didn't understand why he had to help those who hurt others. Why should we work for them, pay them and thank them for such a pig's life, which you wouldn't wish on an enemy? The spiked web was choking Leo. Years passed, he worked hard and studied, learned to lie through his teeth, no matter how unpleasant it was for him. To defeat the monsters, he became like them, became one of them. However, instead of being like these people, Leo swore to protect the weak by devouring predators who, despite all their troubles, killed. The man, already as an adult, broke this web. Brutus and Maria were the first to follow him, and over time there were more followers. They grew and grew as Leo proved himself to be a charming speaker. They tried to lure Leo into their greedy ranks, but he refused to obey. By the time the opponents realized what a monster he was, it was already too late to try to stop him. The web was broken, and people finally understood everything that was going on. As a last resort, which showed that Leo had won over them, the tyrants set an assassin on him to destroy their indomitable enemy. They managed to carry out their plans. Leo feels the life slipping out of his body. On his last breath, he does good to his friends and no longer wakes up. Through a dense black veil, Leo hears someone's voice calling someone by the name of Herm. What a terrible noise around. With difficulty opening his eyes, Leo sees a child's face with large amber eyes in front of him. But the creature did not look like a human child. The skin was gray, the hair was white as snow, and the ears were pointed at the ends. The creature asks if he's okay, but Leo doesn't answer. A minute of silence passes before the man suddenly starts screaming. The girl displeased hits him on the head, threatening that if he even screams again, she will hit him harder. Leo, surprising himself, humbly tells his sister that it won't happen again. He examines his body and realizes that it is not his at all. Who is Leo now? Where is it located? And why did the man call this girl sister? Meanwhile, she sits down next to him and excitedly asks what is happening to him. Her brother scares her very much. Should she call a doctor? Something becomes clear for Leo. He is her older brother, Herm, and the girl's name is Gorza. Are they scarecrows? Goblinoids. Scarecrows, as Leo knows, are the weakest race. Even goblins have the right to command them. Scarecrows are smart, but this is not very important in this new world for humans. According to Herm, caught in the middle of the war between the goblins of Jira and the kobolds of Kira, they were enslaved first and forced to work hard in the mines, where no one treats them with leniency. Now the Herma tribe is risking their lives for pennies in magical caves, known for the fact that monsters, magical foods and treasures created in the era of the gods live inside. Herm and Gorza are gray, born, a kind of scarecrow with great magical talent. Despite the fact that this species was respected in the past for its strength, now they are the ones who tried to rule other scarecrows thanks to their powers. Having failed the coup, they were strictly forbidden to use magic, and their skill eventually disappeared. Right now they are as low as possible. Garbage among even more garbage. Raising his hand in the air, Leo thinks that everything that is happening is some kind of a nightmare. This world, this environment cannot exist. Gorza decides that it would be better for her brother to call a doctor after all. But Leo stops her, saying he's fine. It would be so disrespectful of them to bother someone about such a real pussy. The girl still asks not to scream like that ever again. She starts to panic. Now let them get up. They've both been in this place for too long. Leo, however, does not understand where they are in such a hurry. The younger sister pushes him in the back, explaining that he was almost dead when the tunnel collapsed. Thanks to Vi, they had enough merit to save Herm in the first place. Merit, the system invented by the overseers to keep the Greyborn under control, is called merit for work. Even if the Greyborn earns enough merit, he is able to buy only the basic things of worse quality than those who are higher. The slops they feed on cannot even be reproached, and the clothes worn by the tribes are all torn and in any other case would no longer be suitable for life. But in their situation there is no choice. Leo was very much mistaken. This is not a nightmare. He died and went to fucking hell. When Gorza is already standing at the exit, she turns to her brother and hurries him. However, the elder is focused on waking up. Open your eyes and realize that in fact, it was all a dream. He wants this world of corruption, poverty, misery, and hunger, which he fought all his past life, to disappear. On the count of 3, Leo opens his eyes, but his younger sister is still standing in front of him in bewilderment. Herm falls to his knees. All that is happening is reality. Gorza runs up and gently pats his brother on the head, asking why he is crying. Leo roughly beat off her pen, ordering her not to touch him. He immediately apologizes to her and tries to justify himself. His babble is interrupted by a green goblin with a thick beard who enters, who is interested in whether these brats are still here. Gorza gets scared when he appears. The goblin discontentedly asks if the scoundrels have calmed down. Gorza recognizes in this creature the healer Rog. Goblin starts swearing. Do these brats think that his hospital is an inn? In that case, he should serve them accordingly. He rudely asks how much money the kid has. The girl tries to explain the situation, but Herm stretches out his hand in front of her to block her. He puts his hand to his heart and says with reverence that they were waiting for Rog to express their gratitude, because without his great skill, Herm would have died. Words cannot convey how happy he is that a healer applies his knowledge to such a non-entity like him, who is unworthy of the hand of a great master. The goblin first falls silent, and then smiles contentedly so that his fangs become visible. It is clear that the fallen stones have set the guy's brains well. Leo confirms his words, and then holds out his palm to his sister to give what they had in gratitude for Rog. The doctor grumbles that this is barely enough to pay for his services, but immediately orders them to get out. He has more important things to do. Finally, the goblin tells them to come only when there is money, and the rest of the time. A big request is not to waste his precious time. Herm bows, and Gorza repeats after the elder. When they are alone, she asks him what kind of performance it was. Leo pretends not to understand what she is talking about, and the girl immediately rudely points out that he kissed the old wrinkled ass of the healer harder than the priestess of Maga. Herm replies that if he hadn't done that, the old man would have taken everything, and Gorza wanted to eat this week. But the sister does not let up. The brother has never been so down. Not wanting to tell her in more detail, he only says that the stones, most likely, really set his brain right. It's like a completely different person is standing in front of Gorza. They are hailed by a girl who, apparently, has been looking for a couple for a long time. Herm asks why she is not at work at such a time. She was sent to them by Cool, who asked to warn them that Jurg and his friends were looking for Herm. Gorza, frightened, asks why they need her older brother. It's not the girl who answers her, but Leo. He makes a guess that Jurg's brother, Tog, caused the collapse, but blames him for everything, right? The girl angrily informs that this is the case. The guards threw Toga into the punishment cave, and he lied to Jurg that the collapse was caused by Herm. Gorza says with displeasure that it's not fair. Her relative himself almost died in this collapse. The friend waves and says that Herm is undoubtedly a corpse if Jurg is found by him. She needs to leave, so on such a cheerful note, the girl leaves her brother and sister. Gorza promises to pile on the idiot who dared to threaten her brother. Leo is thinking that if they get home, they will be safe, won't they? The girl confirms his thoughts. Their cave is located next to the guards, so they will not be reached there and will not create unnecessary trouble. Herm decides that they will have to shorten the way home today as much as possible, but it can be assumed that they will look for direct routes. Do they have another way to get home? Gorza upsets him. There are no other ways, but there are forbidden caves in which, according to the rules, no one is allowed to go there alone. But Leo won't be alone. His youngest is going with him. Also, when you're in trouble, it's always tedious to go down more interesting paths. That's what Leo's old teacher would have said. The girl asks which of his teachers would say that. Herm replies that it doesn't matter and tells her to show the way. As they walk through the forbidden cave, Leo asks why it is forbidden to be here. The answer is quite simple. Sometimes monsters from the lower levels come here, so you should be more careful. Grem stops and asks what kind of place it is, and the girl asks not to come close to the acid pits. One day Gorza came to the forbidden cave with a working group to throw out the garbage, and therefore knows much more than his brother. While Leo goes ahead, the girl suddenly stops and looks at the ceiling, where someone's corpse is hanging. With a trembling voice, she calls her brother and points to the find with a shaking finger. But, it turns out, although it really was a corpse, in fact it was in someone's mouth, namely a huge centipede, which definitely should not have such dimensions. Gorza covers his mouth with his hands so as not to scream and attract the monster's attention. She steps back and steps on someone else's bones. As soon as the guy looks away at his sister, the toothy mouth of the centipede turns out to be right in front of his face. Big tears are streaming down Gorza's face. Still trying not to scream in horror, Leo swallows hard, but the monster moves away from him. An unexpected guess comes to Herm's head. He is blind and seems to be trying to detect them by sound, or by smell. Putting his finger to his lips, the guy grabs the younger one by the shoulder, and they quietly leave. After walking a few meters, the brother and sister finally exhale. Leo only hopes that they have gone far enough so that the monster does not get them. Gorza is bent in half from such stress, a little more and they would have been caught. But it's good that everything worked out. The road they found themselves on is unlikely to lead them to the exit. Leo decides to follow the tracks they left earlier, as it is most likely a side tunnel. A sound makes Herm freeze. Gorza hurries towards the exit. There is someone else in the cave, so they should immediately warn the warders about the monster before the monster attacks them. The brother tries to stop the younger one, but she does not listen to him, and he bumps right into Jurg, with his friends standing behind him. Jurg wonders where Gorza's feeble brother is. He immediately appears behind her. Jurg's big sycophants grab Leo's armpit on his orders. Herm doesn't look depressed or scared. He says that if they kill him, they will be very sorry. And if they do not believe, then let them send one of their people deep into the cave and let it be quieter if he wants to stay alive. Jurg asks what this miserable dung worm is talking about. However, the youngest of the team turns to the boss, and he sends him to the cave, asking him to be quiet. Herm tries to say that he is not the reason for the appearance of the monster, but they are. But he is immediately mercilessly beaten in the face. The leader orders Leo to shut up, because he is alive only until his subordinate returns. He comes pretty soon and shouts that there is a centipede inside the cave, and they all need to get out of here urgently. Jurg's team starts to panic. They don't know what to do and how the monster got here. Someone says that it is necessary to inform the viewers about it. Herm suddenly declares that this is the best way to get rid of these creatures. Jurg pays attention to him and asks what he means. Leo explains that what he means is that what's the point of letting someone else take payment for killing this monster? How much last time the Watchers paid the team that killed such a monster? Crook, to whom Leo addressed, recalls that the heavenly servant was awarded 2,000 for his noble deeds. Jurg easily understands what this worthless one is trying to convey to him. Such monsters are a gold mine for them. Does the team really want to miss out on 2,000 gold? Herm speaks as if he has a plan, so the leader is ready to listen, since he has some kind of proposal for him. The guy tells the boss that it's worth taking a closer look. These centipedes are blind. They primarily focus on sound. It is also impossible to believe the monster's thick armor with scarecrow weapons. Gorza brings the result. They can only lure her to the pit with acid and try to break through the armor of the centipede. However, these monsters are still many times faster than them all, so if they try to escape, she will quickly catch them. The plan is not to run away from her, but to place yourself along the tunnel and take turns throwing dice to attract attention. In this case, the centipede will follow the sound until it falls into the pit. It all sounds extremely simple, though dangerous. However, Jurg says that someone will have to lure her into the pit anyway and assigns this job to Herm. It is he who is destined to become the last key link. Gorza closes her brother. He is wounded and will not be able to escape from her. Herm is not going to give up so easily, interrupts his sister and says that everything will be fine. He will cope. Jurg, with a sweet smile, asks Herm to help him close the door when he returns. He resolutely replies that you can rely on him, let him not doubt. When the group of Jurga leaves, Gorza looks at his brother and cannot believe that he will really go. The leader will kill him, and his conscience will not torture him for sure. However, Leo calms the younger one, saying that even though Jurg will try, but he has ideas, she just needs to run if things go really bad. But how will the girl understand that things are going badly? Leo replies that he will scream with all his might. Let him listen carefully. Herm announces an action plan. When the monster gets close, Sav has to roll the dice in front of him so that the centipede goes to the sound. He will drag him into the tunnel and then throw the ball. Sav is outraged that this role fell to him, but he is immediately asked to shut up. He is always bragging that he is very fast, so let him prove it now. After Junior rolls the dice, he must run to the glowing moss. The monster is blind, so it won't see him. As soon as the centipede leaves, Sav stays in place until he hears the command OK. Sav asks not to worry. When he is in place, he will act according to plan. The guys should stand under or next to the moss so that they can watch her, but do not make noise, and it is better not to move at all. Jurg will be standing right next to the crystal at the turn. They will take the centipede to the acid pits, then lure it inside. Jurg will help Herm lock up the monster there. The leader rubs his chin. It doesn't look like this plan was invented by an idiot like Herm. Leo simply replies that Jurg needs to make sure that he is close enough to back him up. Sav comes to his place and notices the centipede. She clicks her teeth and crawls towards the hidden scarecrow. Sav runs away from her as fast as he can, attracting all the monster's attention to himself. He's absolutely terrified. Then he runs up to a handful of bones and stretches out his hand, praying that Einschart will help him. The guy grabs the skull and throws it aside. He covers his head with his hands, fearing that he is about to become dinner for the centipede. But nothing happens. When Sav timidly opens one eye, he sees that although she is still here, she is in no hurry to eat him. The monster rises, it seems, trying to find the source of the sound, and then she crawls away, leaving Sava out of the danger zone, which cannot but please him. After a while, it's Jurg's turn. He feels that she is coming, and as far as he believes, the centipede has already passed Gorza and has just left his henchman Hork. He waves to Herm to let him know just in case, because after all, it belongs to him to fulfill the most important part of the plan. Jurg realizes that he is waving goodbye to Tom. Because of this brat, his brother is being held at gunpoint by the guards. He thinks with satisfaction that his little sister is very sorry, but Jurg and his guys will do everything to comfort her later. The leader does his part, knocks a bone on the stone floor of the cave, and even though he was ready for the monster to appear, he is still scared when a huge hungry mouth appears around the corner. Jurg quickly pulls himself together, does not let fear take over, so that he remains a confident asshole until the very end. The monster crawls past him, and he is ready for the fact that as soon as he gets into the acid pits, he immediately locks the door, killing the centipede and Herm. However, everything does not go as he planned in his stupid head. She suddenly stops and turns around, as if looking directly at Jurg. If she had eyes. She clacks her teeth. Herm screams for the leader to run faster to lure her into the pits. Jurg runs away from her, being confused by the fact that for some reason she does not follow the sound, but stubbornly follows his carcass. Leo points out where to lure her. When Jurg is inside, he locks the door and puts his palm against it. This idiot should have thought out the plan more carefully if he didn't want to be in this situation. The rest of the team and Gorza come running. The girl is happy that her brother and others ask where Jurg is. With a sad expression on his face that betrays Leo's excellent acting skills, he informs that unfortunately, the monster followed their leader because Jurg was making too much noise. He lies that they lured the centipede into the pit together, but the boss was caught, so they had to lock them inside. Herm says that he is not asking for a reward for the murder. They can say that it was Jurg who killed him, because this is the best thing a guy can do to honor his memory. God will surely appreciate his bravery and nobility. The team lets him go in peace, promising that they will never forget it. They also bless him. Gorza leaves with uncertainty, constantly looking back at the people of Jurg. When she gets far enough away, she asks what really happened. Is it true that he sacrificed himself for them? Herm admits that Jurg was helped a little, but who knew that the centipede also tracks odors? Gorza agrees that this dishonest man got what he deserved. Gorza persuades his brother to eat a strange kind of food that does not resemble at all what is eaten in Leo's world. Jur tries to say that he's not hungry, but the younger one reminds him that this is his favorite food, isn't it? So why doesn't he want to eat it? She even saved a head especially for him. The information that it was someone's head did not inspire Herm at all to eat something green. The sister pins her head on a knife and orders her to eat in a stern voice. Leo hesitantly takes the cutlery along with the impaled food, unable to resist the younger one. He slowly puts in his mouth what in this world is called food and begins to chew. The veins at his eyes swell, and tears come to his eyes. It seems that the guy is about to die for the second time. Herm spits out everything he eats. Wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, he turns to his sister to explain everything. But Gorza points a knife at him and declares that it's all because of that incident in the acid pit. She knows that the person standing in front of her is not her older and beloved brother Herm at all, but someone else posing as him. The girl calls him a demon. Leo asks to put down the knife, because he is not some kind of demon that should be killed. But Gorza comes closer and pokes the sharp side right into the imposter's long nose, asking about it. How he did it. Herm stutters at first, and then an idea quickly comes to his head about how to convincingly lie to the youngest, Maron powder. Leo explains that he will mix the Maron powder, which they received last year at a sacred ceremony, with water and drink this mixture. Maron's powder is known for exorcising demons, so since Gorza doesn't believe him, he will surely believe this remedy. If the guy's body starts to burn, then she got a slightly burned brother back. If nothing happens, then Gorza will get proof that Herm is really in front of her. The girl has some doubts about this method. Leo takes a box with a round lid from the shelf and starts cooking. Herm says Gorza should believe him after he drinks it. He's really not a demon at all. The younger one still holds her nose to her face and asks to hurry up, less words, more business. When Herm swallows water mixed with powder, he sincerely hopes that all this is just fiction about the fact that the powder exorcises demons and spirits. If not, then maybe Leo will return to where he really belongs, because it's definitely not in this world. Gorza does not take his eyes off the imposter. Suddenly, the world becomes fuzzy for Grem. The sister starts to worry. It really was a demon, it turns out. Leo falls to his knees, but he doesn't faint and doesn't look like he's going to catch fire. He just sticks his tongue out of his mouth, complaining about the disgusting taste of this thing. The sister turns out to be angry at such a prank, because she thoroughly hits him in the face with her small, but strong, fist. She shouts loudly that her older brother is still an idiot. When Herm gets to his feet, there is a big bruise on his cheek, and a thin trickle of blood flows from the corner of his lips. He notices that Gorza calls him by his brother's name, which means, apparently, he believes him. The younger one confirms that he is indeed her relative. Leo covers his eyes by putting his palms in front of his face and, in a humorous manner, calls himself a Tanak, a dreamer of worlds. Gorza laughs. Of all the gods, he chose the laziest. Her brother smiles back at her. What can he say? Herm also likes to be lazy. The girl is finally convinced that this is the Herm she has known all her life, but she can't help but ask why he is behaving like this. Since he recovered, Herm seemed to have become a different person. She sincerely asks to tell her this time the real reason for such unnatural behavior for the elder. Leo remembers that the guy's father once told about something like this. Perhaps such a fable for Gorz is the best option. What else can he do to learn more about what happened? He sits down at a battered wooden table and brushes his hair off his face, awkwardly admitting that he has memories from his past life. To be honest, he has no idea how his soul was transferred into Herm's body. Leo felt that he was in the void, and then his body was carried away like a stormy river, after which he suddenly found himself moving towards a ball of light. After colliding with this ball, Leo woke up with a headache and a lot of other people's memories that definitely could not belong to him. Leo says that's honestly all he knows. Gorza doesn't look scared. On the contrary, she enthusiastically slaps the table and asks if he understands what all this means. Since ancient times, the gods and many of their wards have been reborn into the bodies of mere mortals. They have powers beyond imagination, from superhuman strength and charisma to the ability to change reality itself. Herm points a finger at himself and asks doubtfully if his sister really thinks that he is some kind of chosen one. Gorza herself is not particularly sure. A lot of water has flowed away with the time of the last chosen one. Maybe Herm has some special powers. She begins to list the options: the speed exceeding the flight of the released arrow, the strength that is greater than the traction of a herd of horses, or suddenly he can jump over the ditches without anyone's support, alone. Leo thinks about it. Gorza looks hopefully at the elder, but he immediately replies that he did not observe anything like that. In that case, maybe Leo was just lucky, and he turned out to be a lost soul. Lost souls are people who were born with past memories, but without any superpowered abilities. Few of them manage to achieve fame, except for those who inherited the memory of great leaders or legendary masters. Herm concludes that he really is a lost soul. Leo apologizes for disappointing his sister, but Gorza, although she looks upset, says that, on the contrary, it's good, they don't need such a second one. She strongly asks not to tell anyone about this, because if others find out that not only his soul is hidden in Herm's body, they will most likely think that he knows about the existence of any treasure, and in this case you can imagine with pain what they will do to him. Leo voices it out loud. He would have been tortured, killed, or experimented on, most likely. Gorza covers his ears and asks him to stop talking about this. If my brother reveals any abilities, then let him not even think about telling anyone about them. This is fraught with serious consequences. Herm wasn't going to do it, because he likes it when all his fingers and toes are in place. Gorza can't imagine what they will do if someone sees these non-existent abilities, but Leo, taught by the sad experience of his past life, knows perfectly well what he would do in such a case. Just strangle this person and be done with it. He says out loud that he himself has no idea what to do in such a situation. He admits that that's why he didn't admit to the younger one right away. He didn't want to make her worry even more. Gorza asks whose memories Herm got, because he doesn't really look like a noble person, if you don't take into account the condescending attitude. Leo easily admits that he has never been a noble or kind person. The memories that he has now are from another life, from another, completely different society. Leo was a rebel, those who sought to make their society better, to pull out of the mud in which it was. Gorza cautiously asks what has become of him. Leo replies that he made an irreparable mistake. He was killed by nobles with whom he had been on opposite sides of the barricades all his life. The girl doesn't say anything to this remark, but she immediately wonders if this fool is going to do something against the blouse. Grem mockingly asks about the fact that, in her opinion, is he really so stupid? Gorza responds with an unambiguous look, and the elder decides to omit this topic. After all, Leo is not a warrior with weapons and armor. He does not have warriors or magicians under his command. He doesn't think he'll be able to overthrow anyone anytime soon. The younger one is surprised to ask who the magicians are. In this world, magicians are something like shamans, but more methodical, as Leo explains. It's less about spirits, more about magical energy. Gorza grins. The elder speaks as if he knows about magic. Herm definitely doesn't have to use magic, right? But he certainly doesn't look like a person who uses magic. Gorza confirms that this is true. La asks the younger to stop jumping to conclusions. If the guy really had magic, wouldn't Gorza have felt it? That's why they keep scarecrows around. Gods can sense magic because of their sad bloodline. Their tribes are useful and easily expended. Gorza confirms his words. Suddenly the girl turns gloomy and asks to promise him something. She sincerely asks him not to change anymore. Apparently, it was really difficult for her to come to terms with the idea that her beloved brother was no longer in her own body. Leo holds out a thin hand, asking her to come to him, and then hugs the younger one tightly. The guy swears that no matter what happens in the future, he will always remain her brother, and she will always be his sister. A bright, blinding sun shines through the window. Leo opens his eyes slightly, immediately covering the bright light with his palm. There is a tight bandage on his forehead, and his chest is tied with bandages. Brutus and Maria are standing over him. The man asks not to move him too much, and the woman covers her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. But she does not succeed. Brutus reports that Leo was wounded in the chest and is still in critical condition. The patient looks at them and is surprised to recognize his friend. When Brutus confirms that it's really him, the one and only, Leo closes his eyes. Was that world a dream? Maria asks with interest what he dreamed. He doesn't laugh nervously. She definitely wouldn't believe him. Leo says that it was absolute nonsense about the afterlife, in which he became a slave who was at the very bottom of society. He wasn't even human. How can you even believe it? Maria and Brutus look at each other. It sounds really unusual. Leo asks for help to get out of bed to get back in line as soon as possible, and stretches out his hands to him. But suddenly, instead of human hands, he sees Herm's clawed gray paws in front of him. He is not even particularly surprised. He just finds himself in complete disappointment. Everything turned out not to be a dream, right? Friends stand and look at him with shock. Leo apologizes to them, because there's nothing he can do. The man admits that he misses his old friends a lot. Maria replies that they also yearn for him and wishes at least to try to find happiness for him in his new afterlife. Does he promise her? The blue-eyed man nods. Of course he promises. They don't have to worry about him anymore. Maria and Brutus in one voice tell him to change this world for the better, just as he did with theirs. Leo says that these two know better than him. After him, this world will no longer remain the same. Brutus, stretching out his hand to the side, promises to return to his life again, and until then Leo's company will be Herm, who suddenly finds himself sitting on a chair by the bed. Leo asks with displeasure why this scarecrow is sitting here. Could someone less annoying be with him? Herm walks right up to him. There is also a bandage on his head. He mockingly says that he is still offended. Leo doesn't take his offense seriously. After all, since Herm is here, he's not so offended. The man apologizes to him. There should be only one commander in the squad, and the head of the two is definitely not Herm. He'll have to get some sleep. He indignantly reminds that it is his body after all. This does not sound to Leo like an argument to give control of consciousness to Herm. In the end, the man is going to take care of him, since both are well aware that the young guy will not be able to change his life. But Leo, taught by a cruel life in which he did not write the rules, can. Herm hesitantly admits that this is the truth. Leo stretches out his hand and puts it on his shoulder, consoling with the fact that Herma will be filled for a long time. The guy asks for one favor for him, to tell the whole truth to his younger sister so as not to hurt her. Although Leo has never had a sister, he will take care of her as his own and protect her at the cost of his life. Not only will he do this, but he will also change the world of Gorza and Herm for the better for both of them. The guy smiles confidently, showing small fangs. He is confident in Leo. Let him walk with his head held high. Gorza and Herm pull back the curtain that hides their cave and look at the sun rising behind the mountain. The girl mockingly elbows him and says she can't believe he woke up earlier than she did. So I also cleaned up and cooked breakfast. In her previous life, Herm must have been a servant, in her opinion. Herm is displeased with her name, and Gorza immediately waves it off, saying that he is joking and it would be better if they close this topic. Someone calls out to Herm from behind. The voice belongs to a green goblin with gray hair, for whom seeing Gorza and Herma turned out to be a big surprise. He thought they were both dead. Gorza is not frightened at the sight of him as she was shaken by the healer Rog. She is glad to see Cool, and the guy that it will not happen soon if he, of course, tries. The girl runs up to him and says that the goblin will definitely not believe what happened to them recently. She starts babbling about George and his company, who came for her brother's head after the tunnel collapse. Kull is an overseer, a friend of Herm and Gorza's father. He's been taking care of them since their parents died 2 years ago in a beehive attack. It is strange for everyone to see such a good relationship between the overseer and the slaves, but they are surrounded by good people. Cool is surprised to ask if it's true that the guy helped defeat the centipede. Herm shrugs, he just ran faster than them. The goblin laughs. This is exactly the Herm he knows. No one can run as fast as this guy. After that, Cool goes to the urgent matters. It's time to get to work. They will not be able to do nothing. Gorza goes to the mushroom farm, but there are other plans about Herm. In the tunnels, a column of scarecrows is guarded by formidable-looking goblins. Two acquaintances communicate with each other so casually, as if they are not enslaved slaves. But suddenly a friend of the speaker grabs him by the neck and presses his face into the wall. He had already told him not to have any girls. The formidable interlocutor reminds that his friend does not buy or sell them, but works, in fact, with them. The third scarecrow asks Rak to let him go. If the Rak injures this kid, then there will be unnecessary questions. Rak lets him go, and the guy falls, coughing up blood. The savior goes down in front of the wounded man and puts his hand on his shoulder, explaining that their boss takes the girls who work here very seriously. Rak's father died, and his mother worked hard to feed the family. The wounded man wipes the blood and asks if she died in the end. And, yes, the woman died after falling ill with black spots, which, although it can be cured, but it takes a lot of effort. The boss tried to find funds for her treatment, but all the clients for some reason suddenly left them. There are no greens who would admit that at the end of the day they had fun with gray slaves. Rak is very worried about this, that's why he walks so gloomy. The savior asks the boy to remember this. The man asks the boss to calm down. If he continues in the same spirit, they will lose a lot more people than they are now. Rak asks if he told them the rules. The subordinate nods. They can do what they want, run away and steal as much as they want, but do not touch the girls by the skirts. Even though they understood, however, they remain guys who can get blood in their heads. In that case, Rak doesn't need such filth in the gang. Let Vigra take it. The subordinate asks the boss to stop frowning like that and cheer up. Their gang cannot exist without scarecrows, and they are already lagging behind the Vigra in number. They're not doing very well. Suddenly, the man points out that Rak's favorite bug has returned. To the side where he was pointing, Herm, who looked thinner and weaker than the others, stood surrounded by menacing scarecrows. The subordinate says that the bug has found a drop of courage. He will also never be able to understand why the boss dislikes this guy so much. Rak, looking at the one who came up, sees a picture from the past, as a little scarecrow, a little older than Gorza, held his meager food in his hands, a loaf of bread, a piece of cheese and a ripe apple, and was in fear that now 3 offenders would take it away from him. The boy was smaller and younger than all 3 of them, so it was no wonder that he was shaking with fear. One of the offenders was already pulling his hand to pick up his belongings, and the second was holding a small baton in his hands in case of resistance. The boy closed his watery eyes, preparing for the fact that he would remain beaten and hungry, but surprisingly there was no blow. He opened his eyes wide when he saw a satisfied Rak standing over the offenders, and those 3 were passed out. The future boss extended his hand and helped him up. There is a saying that says that no good deed goes unpunished. Rak had experienced it firsthand the day he helped Vate. Vate was not like Rak. When they stole the keys from the lookout, the younger one was always worried and afraid for both of them. However, despite everything, they remained brothers, maybe not by blood, but it didn't make sense. Having stolen the keys, they were already stealing food, delicious, not as filthy as the rest of the scarecrows had. They looked at the elder with adoration and reverence. But everything comes to an end, and the non-blood brotherhood too. This happened during an annual expedition to deeper levels to clean up hives and other pests. Vate and Rak were on guard, along with Vigra and his scarecrow. The tribe was belligerently killing all the monsters in its path. The goblins expected them to die, but Rak and the others had worked hard enough in training to get out of this mess alive. The tunnel in which they were was illuminated by a stream of sunlight, and they saw a beautiful picture. A large sprawling tree with thick juicy greenery grew in a green clearing bathed in the rays of the sun. An army of scarecrows descended on this clearing and decided to set up camp there. The goblins organized them into scouting squads. The Rak group was sent to the farthest edge, Alf was sent to the area next to the lake, and Vigra went to the other side of the cave. Since Rak was sent to the most dangerous place, Vate asked to go in the same squad with Alf. They said goodbye, and the elder did not object to such a request at all. He wanted his brother to be safe, so he was glad that the younger one had asked off. Rak was right. The hive squad ambushed them and had to fight to the death to survive in this bloodbath. They all came back beaten and bandaged. However, when they returned, they found Alf dead. His group was completely destroyed, and there were no traces of Vate left. The elder didn't care who grabbed him, he just had to bring his brother home. Rak and one of his assistants found Vate's battered and bloody body in the mud. While the future boss was examining his brother, something flew into his back, which was quickly recognized as someone else's weapon. This only made Rak angry. For each of his comrades, there were 2 scarecrows from the Vigorous squad, who attacked them. The Raka detachment was encircled, but despite the numerical superiority, the senior comrade knew how to fight. But the opponents did not. Rak fought, not sparing himself. He wanted to avenge his younger brother, who was innocent. His axe hacked right and left, knowing no mercy for the enemies. He stopped and looked at the enemy's army at the moment when a strange leader, a game, joined the fight. But instead of attacking, Rak suddenly falls to one knee, and the right god begins to bleed. Looking at the attacker, he is horrified to recognize in him a beaten, beloved younger brother, who stands over him with a victorious grin, holding a bloody knife in his hand. Rak was a blind fool. The detachment was ready to defend its commander at the cost of its own life. One of the scarecrows of the game jumps over their barrier and finds himself in the very center of the squad. Rak is between a strange commander and a brother who betrayed his trust. He puts a knife to the elder's carotid artery and shouts at his army to stop if their lives are precious. Rak sees the fatigue in their eyes and decides not to torment them even more, orders them to stop. Vate mockingly apologizes to his brother for never being able to be his friend, because Vigra made a better offer than the elder could offer him. Rak is stunned to remind them that they are brothers. He does not believe that Vate could have meanly stabbed him in the back. The latter asks him in response if he really thinks so. Vate recalls how difficult it was for him. Rak got everything: girls, friends, power. The younger one constantly lived in the big shadow that the older one cast. No one will like this kind of life. However, Vate quickly realized that he had much more valuable than anyone would have thought. No one had it. The guy had the unconditional trust of Rak, and he never questioned his brother's loyalty. Then the younger one decided to use this valuable resource to get what he always had, but could not achieve this because of the big hindrance in the form of the named brother. When Vate came to Vigra with this proposal, he would not answer anything, only threw a thin knife across the table, which the guy would later stick into his brother's side. Vate cheekily asks Rak not to worry. He will tell his sister how his brother nobly died saving the expedition from the attack of evil hives. She will mourn him like a hero. The younger one leans into the ear of a former friend and breathlessly whispers that the girl is fine. But Rak already knows about it, doesn't he? She has a great body. Rak laughs like a madman. Well, wow, I fell into the hands of someone I trusted more than myself. Vate looks uncertainly at the victim, as if he has suddenly lost his mind. From the crowd, Vigra says that only an idiot gloats before the death of his victim. He orders him to stop fooling around and finish off someone else's commander. Vate smiles awkwardly. He thought the commander would like to see the despair of a man like Rak. He grins in response, because a warrior dying at the hands of not only his friend, but also his brother already sounds pretty epic, right? Vate nods. He raises the knife over the sitting brother and finally tells him not to worry about the remaining cases. Junior will take care of them. But Rak grabs the handle of his axe and suddenly rises. He will not give up so easily and will not die so shamefully. To the surprised Vate, the elder cuts off his hands. Now Rak towers over him and promises that he will deal with this pathetic traitor later. The Scarecrows attack the vigorous squad and win their bloody victory. Although they were beaten and wounded, the alien commander was finished. His Scarecrows were destroyed. Later, Rak carries his ex-brother on his shoulder, and he babbles about mercy, justifying himself by saying that Vigra and his guys promised to kill everyone he worries about. His brother should understand him, because they are best friends. But the elder remains adamant. If Vigra took such a step as killing Vate's loved ones, then the younger should have killed himself and not burdened others with torment. Rak throws him to the ground and says goodbye, wishing to become better in the next life. Much better than what he was in this one. Vate, horrified, does not understand what he means. And then he hears the sounds of teeth clacking. Trembling all over, he turns around and sees huge red ants hurrying to their prey. Rak turns around, and Vate continues to shout apologies at his back. And then his words turn into a scream of pain and horror. The elder learned an important lesson from this story. Mercy is worth a lot. That's what Vate taught him. He will not make such a blunder again, which almost cost him his life. Rak keeps looking at Herm. The subordinate suggests doing something. They can't leave the garbage of the game on their territory. Rak does nothing to expel the younger one. Some Scarecrows need to learn the hard way, as he once learned himself. The bald Scarecrow that Herm talks to, when he starts talking, spits out a bunch of saliva. He asks who the boy thinks he is. Leo looks at him without looking away. Behind his back, some Scarecrows are stewing, who do not dare to enter into a conversation with a bully. He orders Herm to leave. If he kills this little guy, does anyone miss him? Don't let him get conceited. A smaller Scarecrow from the company of the speaker calls the bald Varg, thereby attracting attention. He turns around at Pog's voice. A small fat man says he thinks Herm is a stub of a pederast. Leo's face darkens at these words. Pog continues. He says that this is a non-entity in front of him, the older brother of Gorza, one of those who refused to work for Verga. Varg mockingly says that it seems that they have brought the youngest out of himself. Pog laughs behind his friend's back. He also heard that a tunnel collapsed on this dumbass. Varg decides that he will send Herm away with a shout and finally pass on. He calls the guy a stupid head and asks him to get out of the way. Leo doesn't give in. On the contrary, he asks what will happen if he does not move from this place. Varg leans threateningly over him, pointing with his finger. In this case, they will very easily dismember the boy, and then without any obstacles they will make their way. Suddenly, Herm waves a knife professionally, cutting the skin on the neck of the elder. He tries to close the wound, but it won't help him anymore. The guy arrogantly passes by, saying that showing weaknesses to the enemy is a very bad idea that costs Varg his life. Let him remember this and use this useful knowledge next time. Pog and Varg's second friend are trembling. Herm really killed their friend. How did this boy dare? Herm quite understands what he has done. The guy interfered in the business of the game and killed one of his warriors, so now the hunt will begin for him. Herm doesn't look like it scares him. On the contrary, he is determined to accept the consequences of his actions. However, before that, let trash like Pog and his friend answer one question. The guy asks if he was a target before. Are they sure that they are not targets? Everyone here is a victim of bullying and anxiety. They are the victims of Pete warriors, although everyone here is gray-born. However, they remain only slaves of the system. Herm points at Pog with a bloody knife and menacingly declares that everyone is suffering because of cowards like them, and this continues day after day, week after week. The guy continues his speech that not only they are victims here, but also their loved ones, family, friends. They all live in constant torment. However, Herm says it's time for this to end. Who is with him for ending eternal suffering? Who is ready to stand up to cowards and stop being their target? Who is ready to live as a free man, and not in lifelong stocks? Scarecrows scratch their heads. Rak covered his face with his hands, as if he was ashamed of what he said, and his subordinate looks inspired by the speech. The old man is the first to take the floor. He has had enough of all this. Herm is absolutely right in his words. Another young man swings a stone at the minions of the game and tells these bastards to get out of here. After a few minutes, Pog and the second Scarecrow are completely beaten and unsuccessfully try to close themselves from other people's blows. The henchman of the game raises the knife to the top and asks them to calm down already. Do they think that since Herm dared to kill Varg, then the rest can mock them and treat them like that? They are both scarecrows of the game. No one will take them alive, and if the crowd refuses to obey, then their leader will come personally and deal with everyone. The scarecrow orders the one with the balls to come out, take a step forward and show himself. Let them show who they really are, cowards or real fighters. A small stone from that old man flies into the scarecrow's hand. But no one else is trying to beat the scarecrow of the game anymore. They're afraid of him. This is exactly what he expected. The crowd talks a lot, but does nothing to stand up for their rights until the very end. And now let them disappear while they are doing really important things here. Herm clenches his fists, looking murderously at a couple of people in the game. The guy stays one-on-one with them while the others stand with their backs and pretend that nothing happened. Rak opens one eye and tells his subordinate, Rant, that you can't make a rat tremble. He replies that they are still children. They continue to think and believe that a few kind words can change their rotten world. He offers to help the trapped Herm. Rak shakes his head, still refusing to support him. Let him study, so he will gain intelligence or die, depending on how the people of the game act further. Rant interprets these words so that the boss decided to watch how these two work on the boy, and then they will intervene if necessary. Well thought out, I must say. The skinny scarecrow Verga says that Herm has a chance to beg for mercy. If he does this, then everything will pass quickly. He won't even feel it. However, the man does not promise that he will kill quickly and painlessly. This is only a small probability of outcome. Herm only gets more gloomy and asks what if they are weak. He shouts furiously that this means that they should crawl in the mud and allow themselves to be stepped on. As if not so, do they have to endure the bullying of stronger slaves? Allow you to insult your loved ones, silently watching their already terrible life turn into an even bigger nightmare. People turn around at Herm's words. Perhaps in their lives they have never seen such a fool or a daredevil who would dare openly challenge the long-standing system. Herm refuses to live like this. He says that when he was on the verge of death, when he almost died, his whole life flashed before his eyes. Do they know what he saw? The guy turns to the crowd, as if they can give an answer to the question. Pog decides to ask what he saw. Leo's answer is more disappointing than it could have been. He saw nothing, absolute emptiness. There was nothing memorable or even just good in his life. It was a life that wasn't even worth an apple. It was a life in which the guy worked in order to get nothing in return. The life of a slave, which they are all here, cannot be called a life. This is a real hell, which will end only when death with a scythe comes for them. Herm says that he realized something important. If he is already in hell, then why not try to fight it? Why should he constantly lose to the likes of these two? He asks the question, why should they all lose? They are weak, yes, sometimes cowardly, too, yes, but together they can do the impossible, something that no one else has thought of. Herm calls everyone his brothers and sisters, asks them to share their power with him, and then he will give his to them. He will become their sword and shield. Instead, they will be able to regain the dignity they have long lost. The crowd starts chanting his name, when suddenly the guy shouts to Herm to turn around. He manages to dodge the enemy with a knife at the last moment. However, the scarecrow still managed to touch the younger one a little. He left a neat cut on his arm. The man of the game rushes at Leo, but he is ready to attack. Making a lunge, he drives the knife into the opponent's chest. The first one is defeated. Where did the second one go? Pog is under the feet of other people, who mercilessly kick his fat body, and he tries to cover at least his head. Herm shouts that they themselves can observe that the people of the game are not so scary. They are in the minority here. People can follow Leo, because he swears by his life that the game will no longer be able to create lawlessness and threaten their lives. There are handclaps, which cover the noise of the crowd. Turning around, Herm sees that none other than Rak is applauding him. The leader, like Rant, looks serious and says that they need to talk. Gorza runs in the cave with all her legs, looking worried. She opens the curtain and sees her brother, who looks bored at the newcomer. The girl quickly covers the makeshift entrance and immediately asks with displeasure what this idiot has done. Herm doesn't seem to understand what she's talking about, and Gorza is furious that he's making a fool of himself here, while condemning them both to death by killing an enemy. The guy says it's just a necessity. With the help of his right hand and teeth, he ties a bandage around the wound inflicted by the knife of the scarecrow of the game. The younger one in despair asks why her brother is killing them. The answer is simple. Leo wanted to make good friends among this crowd of slaves. Gorza still doesn't understand how killing such people will help him make friends. Herm asks her to sit down, but the girl crosses her arms over her chest and looks extremely angry that her brother, apparently, does not perceive the situation as something out of the ordinary. Leo explains that they need allies to survive, and not simple ones. In this part of the mines there are only two commanding tops, namely Rak and Vigra. The first is strong and knows a lot about fighting. The second relies on the trust of the supervisor and his assistant because the position of the game is more profitable. If scarecrows want to gain influence, then it will be more profitable for them to join the game. However, since there are a lot of people in its ranks, there is a huge internal competition for a place in the sun. As a result, Herm would become a simple servant who should die for the trust of the game. But on the other hand, there is a Rak and everything is different for him. He will consider a person an ally as long as he brings any benefit, and yet his position is weaker compared to the other leader. Therefore, by paying the old man to rebel if there was no demand, Herm let him see what he wanted, how he could inspire the people and control her desires. When Leo had something to offer Rak, he came to him himself. Not everything from the plan went smoothly. They caught Pog, who begged with tears in his eyes to let him go. When Rant wanted to deliver a decisive fatal blow with a knife, Herm stopped him. Rak, who a couple of moments ago treated the newcomer with favor, now sternly asks if he understands what he is doing. Herm replies that Pog can be released. The leader is dissatisfied with this answer. Is Herm joking? If you let him go, he'll just come back here tomorrow and the guy himself, or worse, his younger sister, will already be dead. But Herm turns his head. It doesn't matter to him whether they kill him or not. He annoyed the game enough that he came for his head anyway. But showing mercy in this cursed world cannot be a sin. Everyone sinks to the bottom at some point and tries to become stronger in any possible way. It's clear from the faces of Rak and Rant that they don't really understand what the guy is talking about. Some, in order to become stronger, even resort to desperate actions. Herm looks at the beaten man for now and continues that everyone deserves a second chance, because even plunged into the impenetrable darkness, you can always get to the surface. He puts his hand on the prisoner's shoulder and, calling him brother, asks if he is capable of such a thing. Hoga does not give a quick answer. He turns around and looks at the body of a dead comrade, clearly not wanting to finish either. Hog confidently declares that he can pull himself out of the bottom. Turning already to the Rak, Leo says that he knows that it is difficult for the leader to do this, but they must show everyone that they are different from the game. For this, there can be nothing better than ordinary human forgiveness. Rak frowns at this statement. Almost everyone looks at the Rak in anticipation of his decision. Rant grins, and the guy is still a daredevil. He definitely likes it. He introduces himself as Hemgal, but it's better to call him just Hem, because this is allowed only to people with eggs, and the kid seems to have a couple of bronze ones. Herm awkwardly thanks Hem and asks if he could let Pog go. Hem asks permission from the boss and calls Herm a tough guy. Rak exhales heavily and, with a wide wave of his hand, releases the subordinate of the game on all four sides. Pog, turning his head in disbelief, immediately rushes away from this place. He stops at the exit of the tunnel to turn to Herm to say thank you for the favor, because without his support, Rak would have melted down with him very quickly. Herm enthusiastically declares that there is still hope, to which the boss rolls his eyes, calling him crazy. People are whispering around. Who would have thought that the formidable and unshakable Rak really let go of that cowardly scarecrow? Leo says that people have lived in fear for too long. Perhaps it is. Someone's voice rudely asks if they have finished this performance. In front of them stands none other than the Green Goblin, namely the Overseer himself. He looks very unhappy, has his arms crossed over his chest and is waiting for attention to be paid to him. Rak tries to find an excuse for what is happening, but Herm steps forward, who extends a friendly hand to the supervisor, Torst. He is interested in how Gorza is doing and does not look so belligerently set up for a showdown. Herm replies that the youngest is fine, and he will definitely give her greetings from Thorst. The warden deals with the onlookers. He sends them back to work screaming, otherwise they will taste his whip, and they are unlikely to like it. Rak tensely asks if the Green Goblin is mad at them. Herm explains that they are just good friends, that's why it happens, and yet you should not abuse someone else's kindness. He asks the leader if he can find a quiet place to talk. After telling Gorza all this, Herm sums up their conversation. Rak took his side. He offered protection from the game and assistance in creating a faction. Gorza is interested in what her brother should give in return. Such help is not like charity. Leo replies that he will simply become a vassal of the Raka and launch a buffer zone between his territories and the territories of the game. So Herm is now the new boss of the gang. It really was his wish. The guy says he can't protect anyone without power. Since he will not be able to achieve his goal alone, he is looking for outside help. And the list of assistants also includes Gorza. She only asks if Leo is still her brother inside. He almost answers with displeasure that yes, and he loves her very much, which is annoying, but true. Gorza approaches his face and demands to tell his real name. Leo grumbles that she's at it again. If he does this and suddenly turns out to be a demon, then he will have to run away from here so as not to become a faithful servant of a little girl. Gorza mockingly continues, saying that let her lay out everything as it is, if the elder does not want her to call a priest. The young man raises his hands, surrendering. She has the upper hand. He says that his name is Leonard Iran Vanderstein. For friends you can just lion. Gorza nods contentedly, and then asks to hit himself, which makes Leo grimace. He clenches his fist as if he's really going to do it, and then waves his open palm and shows her his tongue. Nothing's going to happen, he's not going to do it. Gorza smiles. He did just a great job. Pog runs through the tunnel after being released by Rek. His memories flash back to how Herm gave him a helping hand and called him a brother. Pog had a family, a wife and 2 children. Once their family happiness was destroyed by the people of the game, Varga looked at his wife like a hungry lion at prey. In order to protect them, Pog moved into a series of games, as there was simply no other choice. He knelt before the leader and received his permission to serve. They stole food from old people and children who already had nothing to eat. Pog washed down his grief in a bar surrounded by beauties. If at first he was disgusted by all this, then later he became the same scumbag as the rest of the scarecrows of the game. Pog did not try to hide from his wife that he was with other women. And then Herm came, killed Vagra and asked if Pog could get out of the bottom, in which he found himself by the evil fate of fate. Pog grabs his head. What has he been doing with his life all this time? He can and should fix everything for the sake of his wife, Helga, whom he will definitely see again. They will escape from here and start a new happy life. He makes a promise to himself and his family, and keeps running on. A bustling market. Each merchant offers his goods laid out on a tablecloth laid on a stone floor. Gorza, walking through the market, grumbles that she is not ready yet, and in response, the older brother says that if she could, she would have been going all morning. He just accelerated the process. She reminds him that she needs to save money because someone still keeps their dignity. Herm frowns. He's actually saving up for the wooden doors to his and his sister's grotto. But the girl says they don't need her, they live next to the guards. Who dares to harass them? Only fools or madmen. Besides, hasn't Leo gained enough trust? Or maybe he's stealing from workers like everyone else does. Herm instructively explains the situation. The Rek allowed them to control their sector, because he himself would not have received anything from it. And in any case, Herm saved him money by taking it into his greedy hands. Gorza does not understand why he agreed to such conditions. The deal is obviously not profitable for him. Leo asks her to just wait, because, as it was said in his world, if you hurry, you will make people laugh. A boy runs up to them from behind, whom Herm introduces to Gorz as his new Lieutenant Volker. The newcomer reports that the Rek has received news that an announcement has been made about a new expedition to the lower levels for 2 whole weeks. Brother and sister, obviously not happy, look at each other. The army of scarecrows trains with improvised spears. Volker reports to Herm that the warriors are ready for his inspection. The guy thanks the lieutenant and decides to see what these guys will do, because judging by the musculature, they should be able to do something. Herm's attention is attracted by 2 guys who, unlike the others, do not observe discipline in the ranks, whispering among themselves. Herm immediately appears next to them and puts their spears correctly. He reprimands them, because after all, these are weapons, not hiking sticks, and they are not old ladies to lean on them like that. The warrior falls, losing his balance, and Herm continues to scold. Quickly losing interest in the violators, Leo orders Volker to assign them 40 push-ups each, and someone at this time should look after the execution of the order. The rest of the recruits need to be given a task for military training. The lieutenant replies that he will immediately execute the order. 2 groups of scarecrows stand opposite each other, some with shields, others with shaft weapons in their hands. Leo explained the basics of fighting to them, and the warriors understood the idea. However, despite their understanding and coherence, they remain a bunch of miners who have done nothing but work in the mines all their lives. No wonder the goblins defeated them so easily. The lieutenant reports that the leader of the expedition was wounded and bought them a little extra time. But this is still catastrophically small. Herm is sitting with an unreadable expression on his face, but his thoughts are clearly not cheerful. Volker says with uncertainty that he has never participated in real battles, but he has seen how well the guards of dangerous hives fight. It would be better if their army had weapons for long-range combat. Herm agrees with this, but the tree for the bow will be difficult to get. The stingy upper class and the damn green goblins are monopolists in this business. Volker, excitedly looking around, asks the commander not to say such things so loudly. Suddenly evil ears will hear him. Leo sighs. He is not stupid enough to understand this, but he is in real despair. Their army with such skills will be defeated very quickly. He would have given a lot for an impulsive rifle. Volker suggests using slings and throwing spears. Herm dismisses this idea. The stones will not be able to penetrate the armor of the hives, and their people will simply be able to carry away so many throwing spears to defeat the enemy. Despite this, the guy is thinking about trying to launch bottles from slings. The lieutenant doesn't understand how bottles can help them. Volker will be surprised, but the bottles can be filled with something. For example, a paralyzing potion or sleeping pills. You can pick it up for every taste, even fill it with oil and set fire to the enemy. Herm shrugs his shoulders, because in any case, the idea is a failure. All of the above costs money, which the army does not have. They live too poorly, and Leo himself spent everything on wooden armor and helmets for the guys. The lieutenant smiles, because the guys appreciated this kind gesture. Herm continues to indulge in plans that are unlikely to come true. If they had a few metal parts for slings, it would be quite enough. Volker asks if the lead parts will work. The guy replies that, of course, they will, because a good shot from a lead sling will pierce through a copper helmet and nothing will save from this shot. However, even after purchasing enough ore, we will not have a person who could work with such material. But then Volker says that he has one friend who could help in this case. Herm's eyes widen. Is he serious now? The man the lieutenant is talking about is an exile who was saved by his father a few years ago. Volker will be able to negotiate a job with him, but he will definitely not work for free. However, the services will certainly be inexpensive. Volker can vouch for this. Herm jumps up from the bench, inspired by such encouraging information. Now he wants to meet this master. Volker scratches his head. The man is sure that no one knows where he is hiding, except for the lieutenant's family and a few other people. If he takes Leo to him, then there will be big problems. The guy thinks that the master is too proud to see others. How low this man has fallen. Nevertheless, the commander sends a lieutenant to get them this deal, because lead parts will be a win-win trump card up their sleeve. When Volker leaves, two guilty people appear near Herm. For them, he also gives a task to take a few people and go to the acid pits. They go on a little hike.